give it a go. Okay, thanks so much. Thanks for being here. First of all, I want to say a huge thank you to the labor leaders, the progressive thought leaders, economists that we met with, and a big thank you to B. Brusk as the president of the CLC. And I've got some labor leaders behind me as well, presidents of their unions. They represent thousands and thousands of workers, and I'm really honored we had a chance to get together and chat. I also have some of my colleagues with me, and I'm honored to have, of course, my NDP team with me. We are up against a really serious threat. We've got Donald Trump acting like a toddler, smashing his toys, and instead of toys, it's our economy, it's our workers, and it's our workers' lives. People right now are living with a constant threat of Donald Trump, and Canadians are pissed off, they're angry, and they want to fight back. Canadians are showing defiance, they're showing resilience, and so we expect the same of elected officials. We need to stand up to the threat of Donald Trump. We need to fight back against someone who is playing games with our economy. It's a yo-yo. Their threats are there. They impose them. They take them back. But what it means to workers is that people are losing their jobs. Right now, as we speak, workers are losing their jobs. Workers are constantly in a state of fear that they might lose their job. And what does it mean for a worker to lose their job? Well, it means that they're not going to be able to keep their home. They're not going to pay their mortgage or their rent. They're worried about putting food on the table. And so we have to have a plan in place to support these folks. And so having spoken with workers, spoken with leaders, spoken with union leaders and economists, we put together our plan, our New Democrat plan. And our plan is this. You should always expect this with New Democrats. We're always going to put workers first. So first and foremost, workers who are living with uncertainty need to know the government has their back. And that means permanently improving EI so that it can be there for workers whenever they need it. And so some of the steps that we need, one is it's got to be easier to access. It's got to cover everyone who needs it. Right now, 60% of workers don't get coverage, so we need to cover all workers. That includes contractors, that includes independent workers. Every worker should know that it's there for them. The amount has to be enough to cover the bills. The amount right now is not enough, and it's got to go long enough to keep people supported while they get back on their feet. In addition to supporting workers, we need to make sure that we are building in Canada. So we got to use Canadian content, Canadian products, and Canadian workers. 100% Canadian steel, aluminum, lumber. Let's build our country. There's lots of infrastructure that maybe is slated for a few years in the future. Let's get that built right now. Let's use this opportunity that's challenged up against to build up the resilience of our country. Let's look at big nation-building projects like an east-west energy grid to build the affordable electricity of the future in our own country, to access cheap electricity that's plentiful and that can help fuel the economy of the future in our own country. Let's build those projects and let's use Canadian content to build it, to create good jobs. And finally, for workers and families that are wondering, well, what is it going to mean for me with these tariff wars? Will we be gouged again? And that's what happens in every crisis. Workers are the one that pay the price. We cannot let that happen this time. And so one of the things we want to do is make sure that we put a stop to price gouging. Big corporations cannot use this as an opportunity to make even more money off the backs of vulnerable workers. So we've got to protect consumers, protect people from price gouging from corporations that will jack up prices at a time when people are already vulnerable. Our plan lays out a vision for how we can build a more resilient economy, how we can make it about putting workers first, and how we can help people from being exploited by those who seek to make money off of their vulnerability right now. And in this time, we've got a message we want to send to Donald Trump. You picked the rough fight with the wrong country. We're ready to fight back. You might have started this fight. We're going to finish this fight. We're going to stand up in every way possible. We're going to build a more diverse economy, a more resilient economy, and we're going to fight back against your tariffs, tariff for tariff, whatever it takes, we're ready to fight back. Donc, je suis tellement honoré. Premièrement, je veux remercier tous les chefs de partis syndicaux, tous les progressistes avec lesquels on a eu une rencontre. Et particulièrement, je veux remercier B. Brusk, la présidente de la CLC. Elle représente des milliers des employés. On a parlé avec ces travailleurs et ces chefs et je veux les remercier pour leur leadership aussi. Maintenant, on a une grave menace, la menace de Donald Trump, qui joue avec notre économie et qui crée des chaos. Et le résultat, c'est qu'on a des travailleurs qui ont déjà perdu leurs emplois et il y a une menace qui plusieurs des employés vont perdre leurs emplois aussi. Dans ces temps difficiles, on a un message. On va se battre contre Donald Trump. Les Canadiens sont fiers. Les Québécois sont fiers. On va défendre notre pays. Mais la façon qu'on le fasse, c'est en défendant les travailleurs. Ça, c'est primordial pour nous comme parti. Donc, en discutant avec les chefs des partis syndicaux, on a notre plan NPD pour répondre à ces attaques contre nos pays. Donc, premièrement, ce qu'on doit faire, on doit avoir un plan pour protéger les travailleurs impactés par les tarifs. Ça veut dire qu'on doit améliorer l'assurance emploi. On doit augmenter le montant pour garantir que les gens peuvent se permettre de payer les factures. On doit rendre accès plus facile et ça doit durer plus longtemps pour qu'on puisse aider les gens dans une manière qui est vraiment nécessaire. Deuxièmement, on doit construire au Canada. Ça veut dire qu'on doit investir davantage dans les projets où on peut créer des bons emplois, particulièrement des bons emplois syndiqués. Donc, les projets d'infrastructure, des ponts, des rues et des grands projets nationaux comme une électrification Est-Ouest, où on crée des bons emplois et aussi on crée un climat pour l'industrie avec l'énergie qui est moins chère, qui est propre aussi. On peut construire un pays et une économie qui est plus résilient et c'est maintenant le temps de le faire. Finalement, pour les familles qui ont peur que toute cette guerre commerciale va dire que les coûts vont augmenter, le coût de la vie va augmenter, on doit protéger les gens contre les entreprises qui arnaquent les gens, contre l'exploitation des grandes entreprises. Donc, on va faire ça aussi. And finally, I just want to point out, both in English and French, that in this time that we're up against a real serious challenge, we're hearing from others like Mark Carney that it's a time to give tax breaks to big corporations, hoping that that's somehow going to create jobs. That is a failed approach. It's been tried in the past. It has not worked. Giving big billion-dollar giveaways to billion-dollar corporations just makes them richer. It doesn't actually create jobs for workers. It is a wrong approach. And Pierre Poilievre, he is the choice. He is the pick of Elon Musk. He's not going to stand up to Donald Trump. He doesn't want to upset his buddy Elon Musk. So he's not going to stand up for workers. He's not going to stand up for people. Ce qui est clair dans ce moment, on a des gens comme Mark Carney qui pensent qu'on doit donner des gros cadeaux aux milliardaires au lieu d'investir dans les travailleurs. Ils pensent qu'en donnant d'argent aux grandes entreprises, ça va créer des emplois. C'est quelque chose qui n'a marché pas dans le passé, ça ne marche maintenant. Ça ne marche pas maintenant. Et on a Pierre Poilievre qui est le choix. Il est le choix de Elon Musk, donc il ne va pas se tenir debout contre Donald Trump parce qu'il veut faire plaisir à Elon Musk. Donc, il n'est pas quelqu'un qui va défendre notre pays. We are ready to stand up and fight back. On est prêt de défendre notre pays. On va s'attaquer directement à Donald Trump en disant on est prêt de défendre notre pays. On va riposter parce qu'on est fiers de qui nous sommes. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have. Before I get to questions, actually, I am very honored to ask B. Brusk, the president of CLC, to share some thoughts after our discussion that we had and with the NDP plan we've just presented. B. Brusk.
Thank you. Thank you, Jagmeet. And we just did have a fantastic meeting with a number of union leaders from across Canada on Zoom and some in person. They are telling us that workers in various different sectors and right across this country are already worried. They are already feeling the impacts. It's not just the reality of tariffs, it's the threat of tariffs. We've already heard of layoffs, we've heard of slowdowns, and we're hearing from employers that they are not getting the orders in that they anticipate getting in, which means layoffs that will be coming in the future weeks and months. And that is critically important for us to recognize not just the reality of tariffs, but the impact of the threat. We've got 4 more years of chaos. What we need out of this chaos is a vision and a plan, and the CLC strongly supports the NDP plan for worker supports. Workers need to know that government has their back, that there is a plan in place, that when their workplace and their community is impacted, that there is a plan to keep them connected to their employer, connected to their workplace, that there are supports available for their community and for the industry that they're working in. So we are looking forward to doing the work, and we're looking forward to continuing collaboration.
Thanks so much, B. Really honored to have you here, and your support means the world to us. So thank you so much, B. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Rachel Haynes from CTV National News. It appears that the government is going to be making some kind of announcement for workers this afternoon. And I'm just wondering, what do you need to see in order to support it other than just these EI measures? Or if they don't include these EI measures, will you not support their plan?
So, first of all, I want to make it really clear, we're prepared to support measures that help working people. First, let's get that done, and election is secondary to that. So we're prepared to do that. We think it's important. I can't imagine any opposition leader, the crisis that we're up against, who wouldn't want to see supports in place for working people who are right now worried that they're going to lose their jobs because of this tariff and this trade war, these tariffs and this trade war. So that's the first point. In terms of a plan, we want to see a plan, as B mentioned, as workers have mentioned, a plan that puts workers first. We don't want to see blank checks going to companies. We want to see supports with ironclad strings attached, that they are tied to keeping jobs in place, keeping salaries in place. We don't want any money that the federal government puts down for supports going towards CEO bonuses, going towards dividends for stockholders. None of that can be allowed. We have to be very clear. Supports that we put forward are about working people, about workers being connected to their jobs and workers staying in their jobs. And no money should be spent that ends up lining the pockets of CEOs or executives. That's got to be something that's got to be very firm on. We've got to be very firm on that. So what we want to see is a plan for those workers impacted. We're already seeing workers losing their jobs, and there's nothing in place. So we want to see a plan that supports workers, that keeps workers connected to the place of employment. We want to see investments that are tied to jobs. We also want to see a plan that creates jobs in Canada. And this is an important point. We can't just talk about helping workers who might lose their job. Let's create good jobs in Canada, and let's do that by building up a more resilient Canada where we invest in Canadian content, Canadian workers, building the things we need for our economy. We need to build homes. So let's invest in building homes. We know we need to build infrastructure projects. Let's build those using Canadian content. Let's build up a robust Canadian economy by building Canadian, buying Canadian.
Thank you. And earlier in the week, you had said that this could be worse than the pandemic. And during the pandemic, we did have some relief programs that included checks to people. Is that something that you would want to see again?
In our plan, we outline some of the supports for people. We should look at existing tools that we have, like the child benefit, as a way to support families, given the potential increase in costs. The severity and the scope of what we're up against is twofold. One, it's the massive potential loss of jobs. And the second is the increase in costs at a time when people are already feeling so squeezed. When you talk to people about the cost of groceries, the cost of living, it's already so expensive. A trade war could jeopardize that and make it even more expensive. Coupled with the fact people are already going to be losing their jobs, it could be very devastating. So we want to see supports for workers, and we're also looking for targeted supports for people that might be specifically impacted with the high cost of living. I think about seniors on fixed incomes as well. So looking at other ways to get those supports directly to people that might be hardest impact.
Bonjour, Monsieur Singh, Andréane de Radio-Canada. Dans les mesures que vous proposez aujourd'hui, pour y arriver, faut-il créer de nouveaux programmes où on peut agir dans les programmes qui sont déjà existants?
Dans le passé, on a dit qu'on a besoin d'une assurance emploi qui est là pour tout le monde, tout le temps. Donc, ça, c'est pourquoi on dit c'est maintenant le moment de réformer et améliorer l'assurance emploi pour qu'on puisse utiliser ce programme pour tous les gens, tout le monde. Donc, les éléments que j'ai soulignés, je veux le répéter, c'est le fait que c'est seulement 40% des gens, 40% des travailleurs qui sont couverts par l'assurance emploi maintenant. Évidemment, on doit changer ça. On doit avoir un programme qui couvrir tous les Canadiens qui travaillent. Donc, ça, c'est un changement. Le montant, c'est inadéquat, donc on doit augmenter le montant et il y a trop de délais pour recevoir l'appui. Donc, ce sont les éléments qu'on va voir. Donc, au lieu d'avoir un programme spécifique comme on a fait pendant la pandémie, on pense que c'est maintenant le temps d'avoir une assurance emploi qui fonctionne mieux pour tout le monde.
Puis, on se demandait aussi si dans vos discussions avec les leaders syndicaux, s'il y avait des contacts avec les syndicats américains, puis si c'était une option envisagée d'avoir une action concertée.
Oui, absolument. J'ai déjà eu des conversations avec des chefs des mouvements syndicaux et des syndicats spécifiques qui ont des partenaires internationaux et ils sont en train de travailler ensemble avec leurs partenaires internationaux parce que l'impact de cette guerre commerciale va heurter pas seulement les Canadiens, ça va heurter aussi les travailleurs des États-Unis. Donc, ce que Donald Trump a fait va heurter les gens en général. Ça va heurter les travailleurs aux États-Unis et au Canada. Donc, ça, c'est pourquoi ce qu'il a fait, c'est la mauvaise chose à faire parce que ça heurte les travailleurs et les travailleuses. Et les syndicats sont d'accord que ce n'est pas la bonne chose à faire. On a besoin de ce moment de solidarité et ensemble, on peut et on va réussir. Hi there.
Hi, David Thurton from CBC News. So, am I understanding you correctly? A confidence vote is completely off the table until you get some sort of support for workers through.
Yeah, so I'll put it this way to be very clear. We believe at this time, with the urgency of what we're up against, the seriousness of the impact on our economy, on workers, the threat to workers' jobs, the increase in cost of living, that we want to see protections in place first and an election second. We're going to have an election this year. We're ready for that. But we want to see supports for workers done first. For us, this is a matter of putting workers first, and election can come second. And so, yes, absolutely, we are ready to see supports passed in the House, put in place, working to support people who are hurt right now, and then we'll go to an election. Donc, dans ce moment, on est vraiment dans une crise. Donc, quand je parle de rappeler le Parlement, c'est rappeler le Parlement pour une session d'urgence, parce que la situation est vraiment urgente. Donc, pour être tellement clair, je suis prêt de mettre en œuvre des protections pour les travailleurs en avant et puis des élections après. Les élections peuvent attendre et je pense que tous les chefs d'opposition vont être d'accord qu'on a besoin des appuis pour les travailleurs impactés par cette guerre commerciale et ces tarifs avant d'avoir une élection.
And of course, you're presenting your plan for workers. Okay, sorry. We're having trouble with the mic.
Do it again, get a clear hit.
Yeah, so you're presenting your plan for workers. Does that require measures or legislation for it to pass? Or are you clear whether or not that can happen with regulation, not legislation? And have you been consulted on the Liberal plan? And Madam Bursk, have you been consulted as well?
I'll start with myself. I've not been consulted. I've not had any conversations. I've been putting out what I want to see happen in the public domain, speaking to you and doing press conferences. There are some changes I'm sure the government can do with regulation. During the pandemic, we met regularly because it was very serious and we wanted to move very quickly and we wanted to have the full scope of Parliament to be able to put in place the legislation necessary. I think we're in that point again. We're at a serious crisis. This is probably one of the worst economic attacks our country has ever experienced, certainly in my lifetime, if not ever. And so we need to respond with that same urgency, that same seriousness. And so to have Parliament ready to go to pass any laws necessary seems to be the right thing to do. And that's why I'm calling for that so that we can have no question about whether or not the actions necessary to support workers will actually happen. So let's have Parliament recalled. Let's get the work done. Let's pass anything necessary to support workers in this time.
Hello, Mr. Singh. Craig Lord, the Canadian
do you want to
Press.
answer? Okay.
Sorry.
B will follow up with you afterwards, I guess.
Great. Craig Lord, the Canadian Press. You said you want to finish the fight with the United States. So what does Canada need to do that it's not doing right now to end this trade war once and for all?
Well, a lot of what we heard from the leaders that we spoke to is that there is a lot of tools that we have that we can use and we're not using. Looking at export taxes on our energy that goes to the States, shutting off the flow of critical things that the States needs, like critical minerals. Looking at the fact that right now, when the United States has effectively torn up a free trade agreement, that means all bets are off. All the patent protection, all the medication patent protection that the United States relies on, that's off the table now, really. If they've teared up the agreement, what's to say that our generic medication companies can't actually start tooling up and building or producing the medication that was once patented? We need to show that if you're willing to bring this fight, there is going to be pain. And so let's use every tool available: energy exports, patent laws, copyright. I mean, really everything is on the table now, and we need to show that we're prepared to do that to end this fight as quickly as possible. And so there has not been that necessary escalation. I support the fact that we're continuing with tariffs, even though Donald Trump has paused. We can't allow him to play this game with us, that he pauses one day, starts up another day. He's really playing games with Canadians' lives, with Canadians' livelihoods. And so we got to fight back with everything we have. There's a lot of gas left in the tank. Let's use all our tools, and let's get real serious about saying, you want to pick this fight for us? Well, you don't realize the consequences. This is going to mean critical minerals. This is energy exports, electricity exports. Let's show everything that we have and show that this is going to be a fight that's going to hurt Donald Trump and hurt his buddies, and say, back down, back off.
And how ready is the NDP for a federal election, and when do you expect to see one called?
Well, in terms of the timing, that's going to be a question for the Liberals. They're the ones that are going to call the election. So probably ask them when they're going to call one. In terms of our readiness, we're ready to go. We've got our bus ready. We've got our plane ready. We are ready to go. And that's why when I said I want to see workers' protections in place first, I meant it. We're ready to go to an election. We'll be ready whenever it's called. But right now is the time to put in place those supports first, and we can have an election afterwards. So let's do that. Let's put in place some clear guarantees that workers know they're going to get the help they need. There's going to be protections in place for them. There's going to be a plan to build Canadian by Canadian so we can build up our economy. And then we can go to an election. But I'm ready either way. Sure, we'll give you one more.
I just want it's just to clarify a little bit because
Yeah.
you're saying that you want to get Parliament back to pass legislation before an election. So does that mean you're prepared to pass whatever legislation the Liberals bring forward?
Well, it's about making sure that we pass something that supports working people. They bring forward a proposition to cut taxes for billionaires. No, that's not something we want. We want to see a plan that actually supports workers. Like we did in the pandemic. We thought in the pandemic, we knew there's going to be a massive blow to our economy. We wanted to see things get done that actually help workers. If there's a plan to help workers and it's going to support the people we need, yes, let's call Parliament and get that done. Changes to EI. B. Brusk, president of the CLC, and unions across this country have been calling for that. Let's change EI so that it works for working people. If that's the change that's proposed, yes, absolutely, we'll get that done. But we're not going to support tax cuts for billionaires like Mark Carney's proposing and like Pierre Poilievre's proposing. We want to see real supports for working people put in place and so that we can support them in this difficult time. Merci, thank you. Thanks all. That was awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Appreciate you being here.
Sorry, Judge. It's all good, bro.
You still did the end of this handshake there. Yeah, I think folks don't want to have that.